Alrighty, welcome to Jacob V Weekly. We want to start again by inviting you to donate to Caddyshack of Himmel, Illinois. Caddyshack IL on Facebook. Donate now. Every dime goes straight to saving and treating, adopting out real cats in need. I've been there. I've seen it. Helped them. All my pets are rescued. It's something I really believe in. Save a life. Let's start the show. Al.
Hi.
Joe is... I gave Joe the night off. He's celebrating an exam that I guess either went horribly or went really well. He may show up. I'm so glad to have you. Are actually one of my most requested guests.
By whom?
I don't want to dox anybody because my listeners are very vocal in their support of the show. They out themselves, and so I don't want to say. But there's a certain demographic of women of a certain age that really enjoy you and your perspective.
Women of a certain age. I will take women of a certain age as a demographic that is into whatever I have to say.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great, and I'm so happy you're here because there's just so much. Just knowing that you were going to be here made me feel really good, but there's so much stuff in here to cover. Anyway, so I want to make a note about the show. It's called Jacob V Weekly. It has been longer than 7 days since we did an episode, but we did one last calendar week, and we're doing one this calendar week. So it's free.
It counts.
So get over it. It's going to be great. I'm so glad we're all here together, and really our downloads on Podbean, who is our aggregator, they're higher than they've ever been. We're up like 140% for the past 2 weeks. So, we're doing fine. Everything's going to be great. Oh God. So, I've been working on just trying to crawl out of this hole all day. I feel like Bill and Melinda Gates are getting divorced because she wants him to release the patents to the third world, and he doesn't want to because he wants to right-size population through attrition, Alfred.
Well, that's a pretty strong allegation to levy. I was just going to go with Epstein connections, and that was...
I think that's a false flag. I think that's the only reason he lets us know about Epstein is because he wants to draw attention away from his actual more sinister intentions.
His genocidal intentions are...
I don't think it's genocidal. I don't think he wants to kill anybody, but I think he wants to let about 2.6 billion people die.
How is that really functionally different from a moral perspective? You have the power to stop it.
No, it's not. I agree. He absolutely has the power.
So then I think genocide is not too strong a word to use in that circumstance, right?
No, I mean, yeah, I don't want it. I don't want it.
I think it's a pretty strong claim to make without concrete or any evidence.
Well, I just started the show.
Well, so present your evidence then. You haven't buried the lead on that one.
I mean, he's said things before about... Hold on. I'm having a not stereo image. I got 2 sets of headphones on. He said things before about wanting to reduce population and which has always been kind of weird terminology to use. And I think he doesn't want to graduate people out of the third world. He wants to let them kind of decrease in population in that area so that they don't have to be graduated out of it and they'll quit shitting in our water.
Again, that's a pretty strong allegation to make in the absence of anything other than, it's one thing to sort of talk about how an overpopulated Earth is a bad thing. I mean, I think we can all agree on that, right? Like that's not a controversial statement.
No, I mean,
it's another thing to suggest that I want to enact, reducing population reduction of people who are already born, because that's, who did that was the Nazis.
That's what I'm saying.
That's kind of that's kind of frowned on in modern society. It's just not a thing. One, says
that's why there's all the coded language, bro.
Well, I'm not arguing.
Do you follow Randy Quaid on Twitter?
I don't, because I know kind of where Randy Quaid sits on things, and it's very disappointing. It ruined Christmas Vacation for me.
It's hard. It's hard. He's obviously ill. It's not great. Twitter's not great.
I think half of the country, my Twitter is inactive lately, but you can't honestly tell me that you think the things that I post on Twitter are fun or
no. I mean, I just think I think they're much more beneficial to the kind of things we should be doing on the internet than to most of the other things on Twitter. Is really
those are the kind of things that get you 93 followers on Twitter in the aggregate. Like that's how you have a Twitter account with fewer than 100 people that actually watch it. Wow. Although I did have a comment from a current sitting state representative in the Missouri legislature who did tell me that my Twitter content was really substantive and interesting. And it so happens that I disagree with literally everything she has done as a legislator. And she is like a nice person, a nice lady in my personal relationship with her, and absolutely wrong thinking politically in every way that I can think of. But Mary Elizabeth Coleman, I still like you as a person.
I hope she's not listening to this.
If she is listening to it, you have a very wide demographic.
I mean, that would be, talk about a gate or a birth.
She's a very nice lady in my personal relationship.
Jesus, you are hijacking my vibe right now.
I'm sorry, man. What do you have an agenda? I didn't mean to turn.
I don't have an agenda necessarily, but I do have notes.
Well, what's your?
It's just been so long, and see, every time I think about something that I want to talk about, I put it in my notes. So it's, some of it's in order, some of it's not. There's a couple things here that I do need your assistance on, and largely, this is a conversation. We're doing great. I'm so happy to see you. I got new glasses.
I'm gonna give you the biggest hug as soon as I'm out of my.
I'm gonna lick you. I'm gonna lick you.
I'm gonna come over and like I'm gonna put a leg up, and that's gonna be that kind of hug.
Whoa.
Right.
Whoa. You know this song. I can't quit listening to this song called Show Me Love by Robin S. Not Robin with a Y, which was later. But there's like an older one, and I meant to play it. I can't necessarily.
I'm gonna bring it up on mine and listen to it.
Bring it up. Know. So it's like a song from, it's 1993 is when it came out originally. It's like a dance, like a 90s dance thing, and I think it must have been popular for remixes. Yeah. And I know. But you really listen closely to it.
Is it the Night at the Roxbury song? Is that one we're talking about?
It's a very similar song, but no, it's not the same song. And it's also got the same name as, but this, okay, so this one that we're talking about, she has such a like crazy powerful voice. If you listen to just the vocal, you realize there's no like backing vocals at all. There's no real effects other than just like the reverb, and you can tell she's singing really loud and
it's just like a soul operatic pipes.
Operatic, yeah, but on like a gay bar like dance hit.
Totally, like it's like a soul, like it's like I said, soul operatic, like it's like
yeah.
It's
and
like not really opera.
That's what I think. I looked up. It's like, whatever happened to that lady? Is she still around doing anything? Because I listen to that song all the time. It's on my monthly playlist on Spotify. If you're a Spotify user, Jacob V's favorite songs, we just hit a year on those. So there's 12 of those. This song's on there. And let's see. I mean, just thinking about what, like where that, and it was, oh, you know what I was thinking about was when people say, when the fat lady sings, as I think it must have actually originally been a pudgier lady. You got to have that diaphragm to push all that air, out your neck hole.
It is a bit of a myth, but there's a truth behind the myth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a common heftier lady, that was often the true soprano in these operas, which isn't to say that there aren't many brilliant sopranos who aren't heftier, or that really correlates. But I think it was an issue of privilege back in the olden days when privilege meant you could be heavier, and people who were heavier were necessarily privileged, and the type of wealthy person who could devote a life to being a professional singer might have had wealth.
Wow,
that's my theory.
I've
got no research.
I didn't know how you were going to save it there at the end, but at the end you grabbed me back again, and I was like, wait a minute, that makes sense to me. Just a bunch of thick, rich bitches singing. I love it. Now,
it was like when Rubenesque was like the beauty standard, right?
No, that's my thing too. That's where I kind of pick that up as sort of an aesthetic that I'm drawn to. Is from the art museum. All the paintings, of old rich bitches, they were always thick as hell.
I mean, they were, because being thick meant that you had money, and it was like a good thing.
Listen, when you say thick, it makes me uncomfortable.
I'm sorry.
And it's not your fault. It's my bias against like something about you culturally. I think it has nothing to do with you.
Me culturally.
Or something. I don't know. God. Okay, so I've also been thinking about this, with Epstein and Bill and Melinda Gates and, lizard people. So I was thinking Disney and Marvel's Infinity Saga was just preparing us for like wide-scale loss and tragedy and doom. And
these themes might have pre-existed the
absolutely
Marvel saga.
I could also be projecting some of that onto there. But like we talked a couple weeks ago about how Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight kind of had some on the nose commentary on the surveillance state, which was kind of still an emerging issue at the time, and has since been it's so much more obvious. It's like almost like a feudalist kind of approach to it now. It's like, what are we going to do? The NSA is in my bedroom currently. Literally, my Alexa's on right now.
I mean, there's one sitting across the room, right? We're always being listened to at all times.
You think
But
they
anyway,
could help out with the I like how we're complaining about being listened to on a podcast that I'm
right, we're
intentionally trying to
literally
invite.
broadcasting this
Yeah.
over the internet.
Yeah, meta, bro.
Well, but the theme you just described, I mean, that's all good fiction does. This good. I've always been a huge science fiction fan, but science fiction, fantasy, whatever genres do this. I mean, they sort of take the cultural moment that you're in and really good projection. And good science fiction, good futurism, isn't about the future at all. It's about the present. It's a lens on the present. It's what someone with some vision and some insight into the way society is running now can sort of project these things to their natural ends or to perhaps their extreme ends. I think Nolan did a very good job of that. I think it's a really good example. And there's probably some thematic elements in the post 9/11 world that were emerging at the time the Avengers Marvel saga began that were really sort of evident to insightful writers. And they took those things and they were universal themes because they've been universal themes, but yet poignant because they spoke to what was happening right then. And if you had the vision to see it, you could kind of see where this could go. And, does that make them prescient? I don't think so. But they certainly saw the way the wind was blowing, right?
Wow. I'm so glad you're here. That's exactly what I was going to say. That's almost verbatim what I have written here.
You hear me. I mean, there's a lot of you can go back in time and do the same analysis.
So it's more so that the world feels like it's ending, and we just had a good movie a couple years ago about that.
Well, I mean, the comfort you can derive here is the world has long felt like it was ending, and it still has yet to end. This is not
just get on with it already. We're going to get to that.
There's been at least 2,000 years of doomsday cults saying the end of the world is right around the corner. And
well, they had them before. The Mayans were all about just throwing dates out there. They were all like, just tell them it's going to be 2012. but then put a rock under that rock that says 2030.
I think it's fair to say it's a common misunderstanding of the Mayan calendar that they thought the world would end in 2012. That the end of an epoch is not necessarily the same thing as the end. It's the dawning of the age of Aquarius. It's not necessarily the end of the world. There's a whole new age that comes after that. I think that's the common wisdom on how the Mayans looked at things. Anyway.
So you're giving me shit for saying I think Bill and Melinda Gates are disagreeing about what to do with the patents.
And yet I'm mind reading what the Mayans thought.
And then you're gonna come at me like you're a peer reviewed presentation on the Mayans.
I there's no peer review in my history. I'm just paraphrasing things I think might have been peer reviewed that I looked at on the internet at one point.
What? Google has that scholarly kind of function now, and man, I am a sucker for that shit.
I'll tell you what, even just going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole on random shit makes you, I think, a smarter person. If you could just dive down,
what else? You could just be playing Candy Crush and not learning about Mayans.
Why wouldn't you just be reading about 11th century Bulgarian monarchs at that point? I mean, Candy Crush versus minutia that will never come up. I'll take minutia all day.
Oh yeah, just for like little tidbits, like Jeopardy without the pressure. Like if you could just read the facts.
I'm not gonna lie. I go down those history rabbit holes like, what were the Armenians doing in 600 AD? And then find out.
What? I seriously did this I took a historical linguistics class where we went all the way back to the fucking dudes on horses and like studying like England's independence as a nation, which started like 1,000 years ago. And you don't
want to go down this thread.
I don't want to talk about that this early. Certainly in the show, we haven't even talked about the coin yet.
I happen to have had a couple of lecture sessions where I talked to Thomas Shippey, who was the understudy. Basically, he sat in Tolkien's chair at Oxford, but then became the linguistic advisor to the Lord of the Rings because Tolkien was an Old English scholar and was featured on a documentary, a McNeil Lehrer documentary in the 80s called The Story of English, and was the featured speaker about how Old Norse and Old English came together to become what eventually became modern English, but through Middle English, the simplification of the language. And I will totally geek out on that all day long, but go look it up. The Story of English. It's like a 1981 documentary, and it's amazing. And especially the part with Shippey talking about Hrat and Edith as the Old Norse and Old English speakers. This is gold. It's on YouTube. Go look it up.
Wow. I love that. This is great. Man, this is the kind of episode we're gonna need to take notes on. It's very. I got this new
Everyone
strain.
just signed off and was like, "What is he
Yeah.
talking about?"
I got this new strain, and it's so intellectual. You know what I mean? I've just been solving the world's problems, just driving around in my car by myself. The Oscars happened. I just have to mention it. I don't remember why.
I don't think anyone watched it.
No, Joe cares about some of this shit. So sometimes I write this shit down. We can skip it.
I mean, I
didn't watch it.
Did you watch it? I didn't watch it. I mean,
I saw that Anthony Hopkins beat Chadwick Boseman for something,
and wasn't there and didn't find out until he woke up the next day
because he thought Chadwick Boseman was going to win. He was like on a he was like at a chateau or something.
He was in Wales. He was in it's like some retreat in Wales where he
isn't that
like
where he's from?
I don't know if he's Welsh or not.
I thought why else would you go to Wales if you're going to Wales and you're not
talking about
either...
my mother country here? Like, but
that's what I'm saying. Unless you're Welsh, why are you going to Wales?
I think it might be awesome. I don't know.
Yeah, it looked pretty. Wherever he was nice. Ocean views. It's got like a whole like Portland vibe.
It's essentially it's like the West Coast Peninsula. So
yeah,
I think the whole thing, other than the swamp, which is like 3/4 of it, I think the coast part is awesome.
Oh, I do love some swamp. That'd be fun though if we had like you ever play Titanfall?
I've seen it.
If you had a big robot to walk around in, I'd go in a swamp without a robot.
It would be a lot better in a robot, I think.
But no, if I just had some waiters and some guy named Bubba driving the boat, no,
I mean,
it'd be his name would be like Florian.
Right, like have you ever tried to like see how what Welsh looks like? Like it's the longest like word. Nobody can speak Welsh. It's not a thing. I'm like a quarter Welsh. There's no way I could ever speak it.
No, people that try really get on my nerves. Doge, I want to get this out of the way. All right. Elon, 24 hours from now, 25 hours from now, Elon is going to be hosting SNL, which sounds like a fucking bad idea.
It's a terrible idea. And then our good friend Chris Ward, I think, had a really good screed about this today. Where
Chris Ward's been on the show.
Chris Ward and I have been on the show together.
That's right.
But Chris put it best, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase him in saying Elon, like there's a couple of people who are paying attention to what's going on with Doge and what's going on with Elon in general. There's the crypto enthusiasts, let's call them, that have been into Doge for a long time, and they're more than happy to watch Elon publicize this so other people put money into it so that Doge goes up in value. There's the normies, as he put it, and I would characterize myself as a normie in this regard, that really didn't. I knew about what Doge was on Reddit, but I didn't know it was like a thing that was gaining traction until Elon put it on his Twitter and said Doge through the moon, or whatever it was he said, pumping it up. But what Chris's main point was that Elon being on SNL is going to be a fucking disaster. Like, he's not funny. He's not an entertainer. He's not a natural platform.
And he's going to do that thing where he's uncomfortable and he's a fish out of water. So he's going to start acting like things are funny when they're not. And that's going to be cringe city.
It's going to be cringy.
I do love Miley Cyrus.
Well, I think Miley's a natural born entertainer. Like she knows how to work.
And I love her like apocalypse mullet. Keenan says if I monetize the podcast that I can get one.
You should definitely get one. You should find a way to let Keenan get you
we just got to get that Lion's Choice money. You could write them a letter for me. You could say, hey, can I have some money for this podcast and my buddy can get a mullet?
It has to have to be Lion's Choice.
You don't understand. I have not reached out to Lion's Choice directly myself at all.
Well, maybe I went and bought the Lion's Crave case. I forget what they call it. The Pride Pack, I think.
Pride Pack.
Buy 10 sandwiches of your choosing from Lion's Choice and for $25. Great deal, by the way. Here we are pumping Lion's Choice already. So there you go.
That's what we talk about them every episode. They've never given me a fucking dime.
Let's just say Lion's Choice is one of the best things St. Louis ever did. I say that as a non-native. It is.
I want to open one somewhere that doesn't have one.
Well, they tried them in Kansas City and they failed for some reason. Like people just didn't get it. Well, we've had Arby's over there forever, and people just thought it was like another Arby's. They didn't understand
that it's better.
I don't even hate Arby's. Like a lot of people hate Arby's, and get it.
It's just hard. It's just not the same thing.
Oh my god, it's not. It's apples and oranges. Like Lion's Choice is like a completely different animal.
Yeah, it's beef and beef. It's and you know what? The Lion's Choice turkey is the fucking bomb. I love their salads.
I've never gotten a single thing other than a roast beef sandwich there because every time
I've been doing the large beef and Swiss. I'm back to the Swiss. The cheddar is just not the same product, really. It's just not. It's not the. What do you do?
Well, you're preaching to the choir when it comes to Swiss versus cheddar. Swiss is a superior cheese.
But I went back to cheddar for about a year, and then I said, "Wait, there's a reason I got Swiss for 1,000 years. If you get the extra seasoning, you know what I mean. You get this kick that you're looking for, and
Do
you
you
get
think
this.
it's just Lowry seasoned salt? Because I think it's just Lowry seasoned.
No, it's a different color significantly. It's much
You don't
less
think it's the same
red.
thing?
No,
Interesting.
I had both in my house in my cupboard at the same time with riplet seasoning. I had all these seasoning mixes I had bought.
And it definitely wasn't Lowry's. Okay, well that's good to know.
No, and it's definitely sweeter than Lowry's.
But it couldn't be riplets because it's been around way longer than that.
No, it's definitely not that. It's definitely more brown. Like I would almost bet it has like some fucking beefy bouillon or some shit in it.
Yeah, they just take up the beef bouillon cubes and crumble
They
up.
take like the burnt ends and they like dehydrate them and then they granulate them.
There's probably something to that.
Brother, they do it on McDonald's fries. They put like beef seasoning
beef
on
tallow.
McDonald's fries.
That's exactly what it is.
Because it used to be beef. They used to fry it in beef fat.
They had to change their formula for India because of the Hindus.
That's why
they're vegetarians.
I thought it was just so much easier to fry things.
There was a scandal at McDonald's in India that they were using beef tallow for their French fries, and it's why they were so good. And the vegetarian religious Hindus found out about this, and like it was not publicized. Like they weren't like it was back before you had to tell people what we were putting in food. Yeah. And it was this huge scandal, and it was a big deal. And then like I think I'm not sure if that was what led to the global change to vegetable oil, but it was precipitated by that at some point.
Doge. So is Doge up?
It's I mean, it's up. It's been up. It was up at 420, and then it didn't hit $1 on 420, and so then it crashed. But it's, I mean, if you bought Doge,
what's it at?
I want to say like 60 or 70 cents. I don't even know. Hang on, let me check my crypto wallet. I don't actually own Doge.
Oh my God, Palantir is fucking me.
Prices.
I mean,
Let's see.
The point?
Let's see. Doge is at 70 cents right now. It's up 31% today. It was at 52 cents 24 hours ago. So
what's it at right now?
It's at 70 cents at this moment.
God damn it! I want to hit $1.
Well, that's everybody wants to hit $1.
Crypto
it hit its all-time high today of 70.
Does crypto turn off over the weekend like the market does?
No, absolutely not. It's 24/7.
Crypto's always changing.
Crypto is always changing. You go to sleep.
See, that's why you gotta keep the stock market open 24 hours a day, and you'll see this kind of mania.
I'll confess to you,
people.
You know, you
gotta bring it to them.
In the last in shorter time than it should have been, but longer than I care to admit. I did take a flyer and bought some. I threw some money at the crypto casino. And it's not much. It's nothing that will change my life, even if it goes to like 10,000%. It's going to be like, all right, well, I should have put a lot more into it if that happened. But it is super entertaining to watch it go up and down and up and down and up and down. And I didn't get this because I still think the whole thing
crypto is so much stronger right now because people aren't in the casinos gambling to the extent they would be normally.
There's probably something to that. I had never heard it put that way, but as you say, it is like ding, ding, ding. Like there's definitely an endorphin rush, especially that comes from watching crypto that I get. Like I didn't get it before I had like even a tiniest bit.
Because like the AMC thing was like a whole year after COVID started. I mean, I can see people really exploring their options of where to put that kind of energy on the internet. And 13 months later, it was like 11 months. It was February, wasn't it?
It was March.
But we were,
March.
So about a year.
It's been more than a year. I mean,
COVID's been more than a year, but I'm just thinking like when this stock stuff in the past few months started,
crypto really it really hit a bubble in 2021. Like even if on January 1 of this year, if you had just taken $1,000 and put it into random crypto, you'd have 10 grand right now. Randomly picking, and that's not to say that there aren't shit coins as they're so called, according to the Reddit subreddit of crypto coin or cryptocurrency. But there's a lot of bullshit out there. But if you'd put it into the reputable ones that people are actually investing in, you'd have a ton of money right now. And that has got to be illusory. I still don't believe in any of this, but I will say, if you've got even $10 and you just want to be entertained by it, go buy $10 worth of crypto. And
I'm long on Palantir, bro.
Just watch it. It's hilarious. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's like, oh, I'm losing money. Oh, I'm making money. Oh, I'm losing money. Even if it's like a little bit of money, it's still fun to do. I've gotten more entertainment value out of it than I ever thought I would get.
So do you think that as far as Doge is concerned, do you think Elon's appearance on SNL will influence it?
It definitely will influence it because it's the only thing that Doge's value is tethered to at this point. There's no actual value in Doge. And here's the thing, like there are real uses for certain cryptos. Ethereum in particular, I think, has real world value uses. Bitcoin has a pretty limited use, but there's some actual use cases for some of these coins. Doge was created as a joke. I mean, it was stated this is a mockery of the entire concept of crypto. And the big difference between Doge and some of the other coins, Bitcoin, everybody knows you got to mine Bitcoin, right? Like you got to spend a ton of energy because the encryption algorithms are increasingly complicated, and they shrink and make it harder to mine every 4 years or whatever it is, so that it requires a 3090 running for like a week solid to get like 1/10 of one Bitcoin.
Now, is the Bitcoin mining part of the GPU crisis?
Yes, absolutely. And it's
Because
Bitcoin in
GPUs were
particular.
totally hot even before COVID, I thought.
Well, I mean, this has been going on. I knew a guy who 3 years ago, he's probably a billionaire now, um, dated a friend of mine for a week, but he was like, his whole thing was he had family money, but he was investing in rigs, back in 2017, 2016, for
Yeah, my
Ethereum and
cousin's
for
husband was
Bitcoin.
doing that then, and I was
I
like,
mean, he had
whatever.
like hundreds of, like, at the time, I think it was like, 1080s. And maybe he moved into the 20 series Nvidia cards, but I mean,
We're on
hundreds
a
of these things.
2080 Super right now. Hashtag.
I'm on a 2070. I'm behind you, but point being, I mean, this guy had been mining Ether when it was $50 a coin, and now it's at $3,500. If he got 100 coins out of this thing, he's got hundreds of thousands of dollars just from this. So he was way ahead of the curve, way smarter than me apparently. It helps to have family money and not have to work, and that's where you can put your money.
Yeah, what the
But
fuck? I fucked up.
I mean, yeah, why were you not born with resources and a house in the Hamptons? But
I'm looking at my
it
mom
is
right
what it
now.
is.
I'm looking in the camera. I'm
But I
looking
mean,
right
he
at
was
you.
smart. He deployed that capital. He got that capital, but he
You could
deployed
have
it in a
had this
way.
baby anywhere.
I'll give him credit. I mean, people who use that advantage in a way that is at least accretive, of additional wealth, and they use it to, multiply their situation. It's more than a lot of people do, right? But anyway, if you'd had the foresight to do it, then you'd have many, many millions of dollars. But Bitcoin in particular utilizes a lot of these resources. So like it becomes increasingly hard to mine these things. Something like 70% of the Bitcoins that are being mined now are in China, where they can like, put all of these rigs that are just naked rigs with GPUs lined up in some coal mine where it's cold, so that they don't have to, air condition the place. Uh, Ether, others, they use a different, it's proof of stake. They use different technologies to sort of mine additional coins, which are much more environmentally friendly, energy sensitive, energy safe. But more to the point, Ether is, you've heard about non-fungible tokens. Ether is like the network, the backbone of the idea of these non-fungible tokens that, they only exist because of the Ethernet blockchain. And they're actually using the blockchain for useful things. And, there's some inherent value in that. Well, Doge has none of that. Doge doesn't even have a cap. So like you can only mine 21 million Bitcoin or whatever the number is. Doge, you can mine an infinite number of Bitcoin, and like it's spitting out 50,000 coins a day or per block or something like that. So that, what is it even worth? Like there's no cap to it. It's merely inflationary speculation. It's truly meaningless and worthless, has no real world applications, and is only being pumped up basically as a meme.
I
So,
understand what you're saying, and
right.
I totally think it sounds legit. For my audience, for people that don't really understand crypto at all, what would make something like Bitcoin more viable or more real than Dogecoin?
Well, Bitcoin really isn't that much more real than Dogecoin
Right.
based
That's
on
why.
everything
That's
I
why I'm
understand.
asking, because I know it's a
And
spectrum, and I know it gets tight.
I think that's right. Well, the primary difference between Bitcoin beyond how they are mined is that Bitcoin has a limit in the number of Bitcoins that will be issued. So
Ever.
if you buy a Bitcoin for $57,000, whatever they're worth today,
It's
you know,
58.8 right now.
You can rest assured there aren't going to suddenly be a billion more bitcoins that exist than exist today, because there's an absolute cap. They're hard to create. There's an artificial scarcity that's built into the existence of Bitcoin, right? Whereas Doge has zero scarcity. There is
I
no
used
cap.
the term artificial scarcity today to somebody, and they acted like I was crazy.
Well, everything about the entire idea of blockchain and crypto is artificial. So artificial scarcity applied to crypto is kind of redundant in a lot of ways. But there is a scarcity. There will only ever be, I think it's 21 million or whatever bitcoins in the world at the end of the mining chain. So to the extent that people have put value into Bitcoin, it will never be, the term we use is diluted. In the stock world, if you issued more stock, if there's 100,000 shares of stock of a company and I issue 100,000 more shares of stock, I've just got half of what I had before, because the company is 100% of the pie. So my 100,000 shares now are 50% as opposed to 100%. If you have one Bitcoin, you have 1/21 millionth of the entire stake in Bitcoin. There will never be 21 million more Bitcoins to dilute your share. Doge, you could have an infinite number of additional Doge that could functionally dilute the value of Doge, assuming Doge had inherent value in the first place, which none of this does. I will say that I think there are blockchains that do, and Ether is one of them, that clearly has applications outside of people sinking money into it.
Are you talking about Ethereum?
Yes.
That's the one Paris Hilton likes.
I think Ethereum is a real, it has value beyond the fact that people are paying for it. Bitcoin really has value.
And what is that value? Just
like I said, non-fungible tokens run on the Ethereum blockchain, right? So they only exist because of their applications within the blockchain. And I'm not a techie in the way that is meaningful to explain.
No, that's
precisely
obvious.
how this all works. Thank you for that. But there are applications that exist because of the Ethereum blockchain, and there are other coins, there are other blockchains that
I
are
think just to people that aren't heavily participating. I know non-fungible tokens because of Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan. And is it just being included in a cult of personality like Dogecoin is with Elon?
Well, so the non-fungible tokens are dumb. There's just no way around it. Like essentially what it was, the idea behind some of these art sales using NFTs, non-fungible tokens, is a noble one. It's we want to be able to sell digital art, to have that be a thing that one can own, sort of uniquely. That's the non-fungibility of the non-fungible token, is it is a unique, non-reproducible device. But what you actually are buying when you buy, let's say you buy a GIF. I'm calling it a GIF because it's a G, not a J. But a GIF, non-fungible token from the artist. What you've actually purchased in reality is a dedicated link to a website that you don't necessarily own, where that GIF is hosted. And that could change tomorrow. So you own the link, but where that link leads is not a thing you own. You don't own the website. You don't own the actual picture. That picture can still be reproduced.
Because that's some of the
everybody.
misconception is people think if you buy the Kings of Leon album for $6,000 as a non-fungible token, that you own then the publishing and everything, and that's not even necessarily
it's
true.
not like Martin Shkreli buying the Wu-Tang album.
That's not the same thing.
That was what people think they're buying when they buy an NFT. In some cases, I think people who are uneducated about it, and what they're really buying is a single link, which they own that link, and that link exists because of the Ethereum blockchain. It runs on Ethereum, and it's not the coin is not even really enter into what that means. What matters in that regard is the entirety of the blockchain, of the algorithmic operations of Ethereum that allow the NFT to have a dedicated place in existence on that blockchain. So it's that's a very high level way of putting it, which is about as far as I understand it, to be honest.
No, I love it.
So I apologize. You really should get some kind of tech engineer to explain what blockchains are,
well,
how they work.
My audience will let me know if that's necessary. You want to help me solve some more of the world's problems?
Where do we start?
God, well, California gubernatorial hopeful Caitlyn Jenner says trans girls should not get to participate in girls' sports, saying it just isn't fair.
You see this ladder I climbed up on? I'm pulling it up after me.
Yeah.
That's Caitlyn Jenner in a nutshell.
Yeah, so weird. And only in California can you uh can that headline come out of. So Caitlyn Jenner is a rich white Republican trans woman, and I think in that order is something I read on
I
Facebook
think
today.
that's a very good way of putting it. I love
I
that.
Somebody
In that
commented
order
that.
is the key part of that statement, and it's
So
very well
Ca-
said.
Caitlyn Jenner is a fucking nightmare, but a uh champion of a lot of things that are probably good.
Clearly a very talented person, that had certain talents and gifts that brought those to bear in certain ways. I mean, you don't become an Olympian without being talented,
Totally.
right?
Oh yeah.
Um, Beyond that, I think we've said enough about Caitlyn Jenner. To be honest, like I don't
Yeah.
have, there's nothing good I have to say, and
I mean, I certainly disagree with the sentiment. It's kind of aggravating that so much of the trans conversation is centered around youth sports, which is never something I was included in, and not something that I feel like, I mean, is actually the battleground that
and here's
people
here's
act
a
like
real
it is.
conversation. Here's a real conversation because there is zero concern on the part of the politicians around youth sports being corrupted by trans children. This is
Right.
not a real thing. It's not a thing that anyone actually is worried about in reality. This is virtue signaling by the right in a way
Is
that
this
it
because I
doesn't.
was talking about this earlier with a friend of mine about I was thinking back to when we were under the Obama administration, and I was thinking back to how things were different from the time that I was in then. So I'm thinking about a time that I was thinking during the Bush administration, and just knowing that that was kind of the first time in my life, because I was still developing as a citizen, that I noticed such a difference in how kind of the tone of like the popular conversation was moving on certain issues, and it just seemed, and then once we get into 2016 and the Trump administration, we have real problems, and so we have real fights happening. Like, it's so much different. Than this seems like one of those issues that we're overinflating and kind of using as a battleground for a deeper cultural divide.
Well, that's right. And let's not forget though that you just referred to the Bush era and the Obama era, and let's not forget Obama was elected as a president who was against gay marriage,
Right, at the time, for
and this
sure.
this was
I mean, he couldn't be.
13
He
years
just
ago.
he would have alienated too much of his base.
My oldest son was essentially born into a world where gay marriage was illegal,
Right.
and he doesn't know that, and because it's unfathomable to him.
No, it doesn't make any
Why
sense.
would it be? Why would it be? Or what? Well, who would care? But let's not forget, it wasn't long ago that these things were very, very real frontline, front and center cultural battles, and the right wing lost every single one of them. I mean, the
Yeah.
traditionalists have lost every single cultural battle where it's meaningful. They're still fighting a rearguard action, trying to, control women's bodies vis-a-vis abortion. And let me just pause there for a second and say I don't think anyone, myself included, wants there to be abortions. I don't think
Right.
anybody's like trying to go abortion is a good thing. We should have more abortions.
Right.
You
Nobody's
know,
saying that.
but yet there's this, I think in some quarters still a good faith. I think it's an easy thing to say, well, killing babies is a bad thing. I think everybody
Yeah.
agrees with that.
Everyone
Like
agrees.
so you've got this good faith rearguard action against a battle that should have been over 2 generations ago. But in the meantime, gay marriage is legal. Trans people are accepted. We've had a robust conversation, I think, around what is okay to do and what is not okay to do. And I mean, the shit that was said, you know after I graduated from college, let alone the shit that I was said when I was in high school or grade school. Even some comedies that aren't that old, I mean, they really, like, there's, you can't say that stuff anymore. It's just not
Oh, it's
okay.
all, we've talked about it on this show before. I don't know if it was with you or not, but there's just so much stuff that you don't even go back that long ago. You don't even have to go all the way back to the 90s or the 80s, or where some of it's more obvious. There's tons of really problematic language from not even 10 years ago in
Right.
very mainstream kind of popular platforms. I mean,
So transphobia has effectively become the last bastion of acceptable prejudice,
yeah.
in certain categories. And all of these other prejudices didn't just go away. Like all of these, the people that are pushing transphobia, that are pushing this legislation, are the ones, they would push it every bit further that they could get away with. but this is the last hill that they have to die on, and it's a much harder hill for the forces of tolerance to really sort of get across to people, because it is a difficult thing for a lot of people to accept. And that is where the rump forces of bigotry have found fertile ground for people that say, well, yeah, okay, sure, gay people can have rights and not be persecuted and not be nailed to a tree, but I just don't get why men can't just be men and women can't just be women. That's, again, a very simplistic and easy thing for someone who has not really been exposed to any of the issues in reality to sort of adopt and just say, why do people have to get all excited about this? Why can't things just be simple? Without really doing any meditation or having do the work of understanding what someone who might be a trans person has to go through, or even empathize with that person.
Yeah.
So that's what you're seeing is it's not about trans people alone. It's about all of these things. It's about all of these, going back to racial segregation. I mean, it really is like, how could I still hate on somebody because I hate on all of them, but at some level, like, what is still acceptable for me to say out loud?
Can you hold the line for me here? I'm going to take just a brief intermission.
I'm gonna get a beer.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect thing. And we're gonna be back here in less than just a couple minutes to follow up on our last episode of the show, Kitchen Crisis. Al, I need your help on this. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
So we're not live right now, right? Are we live? Yes?
we're back. Hey, Al, you were not on. No, you were not on.
While I didn't do anything.
While the music was on, I didn't want you to be.
I was really. It was a tech question, more like how this works.
Oh no, yeah. I keep the stream live. I just I built in a way for me to take a quick production break.
So
our last episode of the show was all about the kitchen crisis. Did you listen to our last episode?
I regret to say that I didn't manage to catch the last episode.
It was out for an extra day. It's several days.
I had a busy week.
So yeah, this whole issue that we talk about every week on the show since COVID started. Well, the show started after COVID, so we've talked about it on the show a lot. It's a trend that's been a problem since COVID started. People attribute it to the unemployment crisis and the unemployment benefits that are in place because of COVID.
Yeah, totally.
But regardless, people are really having trouble keeping specifically fast food restaurants and lower paying restaurant job staffed.
Yeah, it's not limited to those though. I mean, it's
not at all. It's absolutely not at all. Now, here's the thing. So I had an article that I pulled a clip from that I wanted to read an excerpt from to kind of put forth sort of an argument. She makes an argument, parts of which I agree, parts of which with which I agree, I should say. But she makes an argument in a way that I don't have to. So I'm just going to read an excerpt of it that I thought kind of encapsulates some of the stuff I was thinking, but it's not necessarily my own words, so I don't have to fight with anybody about it. So stick with me here. But what if people weren't lazy and instead, for the first time in a long time, were able to say no to exploitive working conditions and poverty level wages? ? What if business owners are scandalized, dismayed, frustrated, or bewildered by this scenario because their pre-pandemic business models were predicated on a steady stream of non-unionized labor with no other options? ? It's not the labor force that's breaking. It's the economic model, maybe, right? This is what she rates. We should ask ourselves, our communities, and our government, if a business can't pay a living wage, should it be a business? If it's too expensive for businesses to provide health care for their workers, maybe we need to decouple it from employment. If childcare is a market failure, but we need childcare for the economy to work, how can the government build that infrastructure? Because again, it'd be something technically that we're all paying into for us all to use, right? If the pay you provide workers doesn't allow them to live in the community, what needs to change collectively? We should be thinking of different funding models, different ownership scenarios. I don't really know what that means, and different growth imperatives. Failure to do so is simply resigning ourselves to another round of this rigged game. Now, so in thinking about that, I started with if your business model includes employees that make below a certain amount of money, and we determine as a society that amount of money is unrealistic, maybe your business model needs to be updated. And this is going to be hard. Some businesses will be determined to be excessive, and they will die off, I'm sure.
It's already happened.
But to expect anyone to survive on what they make in 40 or 50 hours a week right now is ridiculous. I thought people that were really in charge of the food in kitchens would have been making something closer to like $15 an hour, and that's just not the case. I'm seeing a lot of jobs. People are saying to me, oh, my place pays more than that or whatever, but those aren't the jobs I see posted. Jobs I see posted are like $10, $15 an hour, $11 an hour. I mean, and we're talking about grilling food, frying food. We're not talking about a snow cone stand or an ice cream place or
it's a hard fucking
Subway.
job.
We're talking about, I mean,
it's a lot of work.
It's gross.
It's a grueling, an 8-hour shift, a double, standing over a fryer for a double. The conditions have been
such for such a long time that, I mean, if you're going into work at all, you're going to have to work probably the whole time the place is open that day.
And that's due to the labor.
They're gonna have to close early.
Places, right?
Joe works at a restaurant that we've been using as sort of an example of this problem. I mean, they're closing for dinner service on Mother's Day because they can't staff it. They're gonna be open for lunch, and they're not going to be open for dinner.
Well, and I saw another sort of insightful idea about this, and I just had it and I lost it. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of threads here. There's a lot to unpack. From this, and my first response to the clip that you just read on an emotional level at least, is preach. Like, this is something, many people have been talking about for a long time. Like, if you can't afford to own a business and run it in a way that allows your employees to work full time, or to supplement their income in a way that allows them to live so that they don't have to go and work another job, um, on top of that, just to pay minimum rent. You're effectively living on exploited labor. You don't have to dividend yourself extra cash. You don't, as a business owner, you're not entitled to a cush lifestyle, right? Like, and so you say the only way I'm going to make the money I'm making as a business owner is if I underpay my employees. Well, maybe you don't fucking deserve to live the lifestyle as a business owner that you think you should have, because you don't have you don't quite the business that you thought you did. The only way that ever worked was because you were basically stealing labor from other people in order to subsidize your own lifestyle. And that's capitalism in a nutshell. And I think we all know that to some degree. I mean, there's no real mystery that, at the top of the chain, you're not working that much harder than the people at the bottom of the chain, that your life is so much better. You're not that much smarter. You're not that much better. The billionaire class, none of them are more worthy individuals. They're just not. And if you've ever met billionaires, millionaires, whatnot, there's a lot of really smart, hardworking people in that group, but there's a lot of people that aren't in that group as well. It's luck as much as it is anything else. And it's luck that puts people in a lot of the places they're at. So any business owner who suddenly finds themselves without a viable business model because they don't have effectively, excess labor to exploit so that their lifestyle can continue to exist as it was, maybe you ought to revamp your business model at this point. Maybe you need to shrink it. Maybe you need to lower your expectations about what your take-home pay out of your dividends is going to be, because you happen to own a business that other people are doing. And I have sympathy for, business owners, like, what was it, Flannery's, I think? Not Flannery's. What's the place on Watson that just shut down this week? It's right by me. But they were talking about working 100-hour weeks just to keep the place open. And they're like, we're done. We're retiring. We had a buyer before COVID. That buyer fell through. We can't hire enough people to do it. We're working 100 hours. I get it. I wouldn't want to work 100-hour week to keep my business afloat either.
Right. But the
certainly
answer, I mean, but they were putting in the kind of sweat equity to try to make it work.
Well, I respect that, right? Like, that's
right, and so they've been doing it for a long time. That's probably a good example. And then they decided, you know what, it's not viable, at least not right now. So
it wasn't worth it to them. They're in their 60s. They don't want to do this anymore. They're working too hard. I mean, they can just shut it down, and they've got enough money that they're not going to be broken by this. So good for them. But then you've got people running 9 shops or whatever, and fast food franchisees are a great example of this. I mean, they don't exist but for the minimum wage slave. And the inside I remember the inside I was getting at earlier was that I forget which business owner it was. It might have been Sugar Fire, it might have been another one of the barbecue joint owners, but someone who's trying to be a responsible business owner, making the point that so much of what's the elephant in the room is that these were, and you hear this from the people that are like, well, these are just jobs for high school students. Well, they were jobs for the 16 to 22-year-olds. But now being a 16-year-old is a full-time fucking job. You don't have time to go work 20 hours a week at Pizza Hut when you're in high school.
Also, who's sending their kids to work at the McDonald's when I need to be there at 6:30 in the morning?
Well, I mean, that was never the high school. I mean, I got fast food jobs when I was 14 years old myself. I worked from 14 till I was in my 20s. I turned 21 at the bar I worked at, it was a kitchen boy. But certainly 6-7 years of my life was part-time work in kitchens. I think it was great for me. I think it may have built a work ethic. I'm glad I did it. I think everybody should have to do that kind of service work and see what people go through to understand what those jobs really entail. But it was shitty minimum wage. I mean, I started my first job. I got paid $4.25 an hour to work at a sandwich shop.
That's what's part of it is what's crazy too. Is I know when I started working, minimum wage was like $6.50, maybe it was $6.45, and then it got bumped up to $6.55, and we were like, hey.
I remember it got bumped up to $4.75. We were like, we all get a 50-cent an hour raise. Like,
I mean,
yes. When I was working at Budget Rent-A-Car in high school for $6.50 an hour, and that was big money. Like, that was like, you're a couple dollars over minimum wage at that point, or $1.50 over minimum wage. It was awesome. It was like,
so what are we gonna do?
We're getting paid so much.
So what would you? how are we going to solve the problem in a way that's going to be that's going to feel appropriate to the people that are saying they can't even put cheese on my filet-o-fish and they want $15 an hour? What would we say to those people that are hypothetical that I just
You
made up?
should probably make your own fucking food. Is the answer to that. If you don't want to have empathy for restaurant workers and you don't want to pay what it actually costs to have people make food for you, there's a grocery store and you should go there and you should buy ingredients and you should make your own goddamn lunch. Because if you
I
can't
like
be
that.
civil and you can't pay what it's worth, then you know what? Go do it your fucking self.
Okay,
That's
so we
the
solved the
answer.
problem. We solved the problem for those people.
Right.
Those
Well,
and
that's the easy
that's
solution.
no. Well, so for
But that
me,
doesn't help the restaurant.
Okay, now what if I just want to continue having the dining experiences I want to have, and I'm okay with uh everything resulting in us all paying for those people to be treated fairly. Now, how what is that going to look like?
So number one, we've got to end the false bottom of minimum wage for service personnel. In that, you know, waiters, servers, whatever you call them, shouldn't get paid less than minimum wage as a wage. You know, they shouldn't rely on tips. That's a uniquely American piece of bullshit that we use to underpay our employees. So waiters,
so they should
servers,
be making like full minimum wage and then their tips.
If minimum wage is $15 an hour, they should be making $15 an hour.
Right.
And I say that as a kitchen boy who works as hard as those people, and they get
call yourself that.
I'm a fucking kitchen boy.
I was a kitchen boy.
I am a kitchen boy by heart.
Kitchen boy.
I am a kitchen. I was never a front of house. I was always back of house. I'm with Anthony Bourdain on this. Like, he's not a server.
I'm still just a kitchen boy.
I'm a dish bitch is what I really am. I was the guy, every job. I worked at a fucking bookstore and I did dishes my first day there.
Tell me I'm a dirty little kitchen boy.
Anyway, you pay your servers $15 an hour. They should tip out the back of the house. That's a whole other issue. But, you know, we should end tipping as a thing that is the allows the industry, the restaurant, the employer to underpay their employees, because that's what it is. It's you're making I'm already paying more for my food because I'm subsidizing one part of that industry, the front of the house, by paying them directly, or the delivery driver by paying them directly.
Yeah.
But the poor kitchen boys are getting paid jack shit.
When Tom Colicchio from Top Chef was on, who is so handsome, was on Hot Ones, which is so weird because he can't eat spicy food. He said that on the show. It burns his butthole. And he said that if you're using tipping as some sort of a justice system, which is super outdated and toxic, but you're typically punishing the server for something that actually was probably the back of the house's fault.
Yeah, and I feel like those of us who worked in the industry at one point or another know better than to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's clearly, I'm not going to say I'm above withdrawing a tip. The 20%
easily up to 30% on tips.
The 20% tip is the basic, right? Like, it's like this is expected. Yeah. If you lose that, it's because you personally, I watched you fuck up in a way that was offensive. Like, that's the only way it happens. I'm not going to say I'm above doing that, because I will do that if somebody does something that's offensive, but it takes a lot to get there. But, you know, if I see you going above and beyond and you have a busy shift, it goes up, in my view. But that's, you know, not everybody can afford to do that, you know,
totally.
Especially when
the other thing is I mean, I don't know. I always think people pay more attention than they do, but the obvious critique to us having this conversation is that we obviously speak from a place of privilege where we can tip 30%.
We totally do.
And we have options on how we choose to feed ourselves.
Well, we do.
I drink like 5 cases of LaCroix a week. I mean, it's wild.
That's a lot of fucking LaCroix, man. I mean, really,
I don't know if it's a week. It could be every 2 weeks. I get 5 cases at a time delivered from Sam's.
That's yeah. I'm not going to say I haven't gotten 5 cases of LaCroix at a time. That is definitely an experience I have had. But
I have documentation on how often I've refilled.
I also have 4 kids who also drink LaCroix. So
those bougie little bastards.
I mean, they don't even know how good they fucking
They
taste.
have. That's what I say about my puppies all the time. They like, you guys were supposed to be fucking gassed in the womb. You have no idea. You hit the fucking lottery. They live better than I do.
Yeah, yeah, it's not a topic. I've already said things about my kids on this podcast that were not true and were over the top for effect, and I'm just not going to go there. But let's
You're
just
a
say
goofball.
my kids are well taken care of. They have more than they need.
I was talking about my dogs, you narcissist. You know I can't eat hot dogs, you racist.
How is
No,
that? Yeah.
but no, I mean, poor Isadora Piglet, her mom was rescued pregnant, full term pregnant with like 11 puppies. And then now she ends up here.
Puppies.
I mean, and the food they eat. I talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show that you don't listen to.
I listen a lot. I just didn't listen to the. I didn't listen to the last one, man.
Call me a
hey, I got
boy.
a job. You know, I can't just sit around and listen to podcasts all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I've been. And what were we talking about?
We were talking about the plight of the service
food.
employee at the end of the day.
Lewis's dog food smells so beefy and chocolatey and delicious all at the same time. I've never eaten it though. So
you can admit it. You can admit.
So what? But what does I mean? Is people are saying that if unemployment goes back to how it used to be, that the kitchen crisis is just going to be over and that people are going to be back at those jobs. Now, why are you shaking your head?
Because that's just the analogy here is the 13th century in Europe. And we had this system called feudalism, right? Where people were effectively owned and tied to the land. And then, I don't know, 40%, 50%, whatever it was, of the population fucking died because we have the Black Death come along. And all of a sudden you have the Renaissance because now labor is scarce. And guess what? Systems of oppression tend to break down when labor has power. And that's what happened after the Black Death. And what COVID has done, there are people they didn't just go, oh, I'm going to get unemployment. I'm not going to work. And this is great. Nobody's fucking doing that. Everybody is looking for the next opportunity. Everybody is looking for how this is, what's the long-term play here? Nobody is saying, I don't know what I'm going to do after unemployment runs out. It's like those people who say that are the ones who have been burning the pavement looking for a job in something else. And many, many of those people found that job in something else. And many of those servers, many of those kitchen boys, many of those,
call me a kitchen boy,
whatever, and many service industry personnel found a gig that paid better, was a lot less of a pain in the ass to do, maybe offered them more stability in their scheduling, because God knows if you worked in a restaurant, the last thing you have is stability in your scheduling. You don't own your own life in that world. Maybe enables them to not have the unwashed, maskless, anti-vax crowd coughing on them all fucking day.
Bro, it's gross. I was at Helen's last night because I had to go to dinner with my father, and that's his favorite restaurant. I'm an hour in. We can talk about him. He's not. If Dad, if you make it an hour into one of these episodes, I'll buy you dinner again, you rat bastard. And it was you seriously. My sister was our waitress, and she had her mask around her chin most of the time. Otherwise, COVID was not happening.
Right. I mean,
thank God I'm fully vaccinated.
This was legitimately a dangerous job in the last year. And why, so number one, I get $600 a week unemployment through the government for this temporary thing. So I don't have to do this. It is no longer a matter of if I don't go to work, I don't eat. It's like I can eat. And I don't need to do.
And you're referring to that you're not unemployed. You're talking in the hypothetical,
right?
Just for my listeners, because I have people of various. So there are people that listen to the show that are neurodivergent.
Putting oneself in the shoes of a service person who was laid off, who got unemployment. To say, do I need to go back to my old life if I'm getting unemployment? There is a factor that $600 a week is $15 an hour. It's something like $16,000 a year. It's not great money, but I'm not starving to death, and I can put a roof over my head money. So that's great. That's a thing. I no longer have to choose between whether I subject myself to potential bodily illness and death or eating. This is no longer a binary proposition. I can eat and not maybe put myself in the path of COVID. So there's a substantial proportion of people that realize a lifestyle that they probably didn't have an option to realize before. many of them with that time took the opportunity to see what else was out there, because so much of living in poverty and working shift to shift is not having fucking time to get your shit together to look for a better position. And you know, anyone who's been in a situation knows what I'm talking about. Like, you're just, you know, dragging yourself out of bed through the day, through your 2 jobs, through your double, through whatever it is, to get home, to go to sleep, to get 6 hours sleep, to try to do it again tomorrow, and you know, let alone errands and whatnot. You know, you don't have time to look for a fucking job. You don't have time to educate yourself. You don't have time to like figure out what a better path might be. You're just trying to pay the rent. So a lot of people, I think, got an experience where they had leisure time and were able to sort of think about bettering themselves. And they realized maybe going back to sort of, you know, substandard wage slavery is not the life I want for myself. So I think a lot of people have opted out of the industry. So ending unemployment isn't going to magically like put the genie back in the bottle on any of those issues, right? Like, you have all of these people who might have, you know, for better lack of a better term, been trapped in this life, that were suddenly liberated from it, you know, and if they want to go back, they now have the choice of any institution they want to go back to. They can find the best place to go back that treats their employees well, that's paying this mythical $1,000 signing bonus for, you know, a cook, which I have yet to see in reality.
That's the thing. You, the people that want to act like unemployment is the problem,
Aren't
one,
paying $15 an hour unless they have to.
I just send me the job offer.
Right.
Let me see it.
People would, if these jobs were so plentiful that they were falling off of trees, and there were really all these magical signing bonuses, and everybody was getting paid $15 an hour plus for forever, and all of this was out there, people would have been lining up to take those jobs. That's a bunch of media bullshit that didn't do their actual research. I want to see the journalist come in and say, here's the claims of all these people. They're saying there's all these things out there. We looked into this, and here's what you actually find. Because I promise you, it is not this you know, cornucopia of this amazing $15 an hour plus signing bonus, you know, 40-hour a week job. You know, what they're not telling you is that, you know, if it's 15 hours, you're guaranteed 7 hours a week, you know, and it's going to be the fucking night shift, or it's going to be opens, or whatever it is. You know, it's like there's all these nuances to the industry that people outside of the industry look at and be like, I'll work $15 an hour. It's better money than I'm making now. It's like, no, you won't, because that's not what they're actually offering.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I can't actually find like a follow-up thing on,
no, because it's all bullshit. What they're trying to do is leverage a sort of, call it an astroturfing campaign, because it's what it is, of political support to end the unemployment benefits, because they think if people are desperate, then they'll get back to where things were. And that's really, let's talk about that. That's what we're really counting on as a, you know, fast food franchisee. You're talking about, I want people to suffer so they have to come work this shitty job for peanuts, because it's the only way my business model works. That's what we're advocating when we have those news stories. That's what that's really about. And it's fucked up, and it's bullshit. My 2 cents. So
no,
when you say,
crushed it.
When you read that excerpt that you read, that's why I say preach, because this is liberation of
that's how I felt.
Enslaved class.
But when I just read something in my car by myself or something, like, I need some validation before I totally make sure. It's like, I think I agree with all of this.
You can buy into that. That was spot fucking on.
Yeah. In other news, Tekashi 6ix9ine's baby mama is in crisis after a botched butt job. Turns out she had an MS flare-up during some kind of a Brazilian-style butt implant, but I think she's going to be okay. I mean, she has MS, and her ass is all chopped up. But I think she's
I love the transition there. That was perfect.
I'm a professional broadcaster. I went to school. Wing shortage. I've already experienced this myself at a local bar and grill. I ordered wings.
That is actually alarming. Tell me more.
And they had wings, but not their usual wings. He said, "Yeah, I can get you the wings. It's the same sauce.
What, these black market wings?
But they're not the wings I normally get. They're still whole. They're not butchered at all. So they're
like the Schnucks wings that you buy, but they haven't like peeled them apart or done any of that shit.
Well, that's the thing. It's also a staffing crisis. They don't have kitchen staff to butcher the wings themselves either. So they fry the wings with the drummy and the thing, and the part you don't even eat still attached.
So let me ask you this before we leave, because you've just brought it back to the restaurant crisis. And I think the final point that you directly implicated there is, would you pay more for the well-dressed done wing than you're paying or you're used to paying, because you're
Yes.
willing to pay for, kitchen staff to do it and for
Yes.
them to make a living wage.
Yes.
I think that's what it takes, is a commitment from us as restaurant goers to pay more for our food, because you're
I
actually
mean, wings
getting
are
someone to
already
do the
kind of
work.
high. I mean, let's just round them up to $15. They're usually 10 or 11 now.
If that extra few dollars, I would eat out less. I mean, I wouldn't eat out less than I already do because I barely eat out now. But I'd be willing to pay that much more money for a better experience for everybody, right? Like it seems like, versus the I hastily, I got this wing out of the package whole, I didn't cut it up, I threw it in the oven and threw it in some Frank's Red Hot and put it on your plate. I'd rather somebody take the time, and I'll pay $3 extra
Yeah,
for somebody to take the
fucking
time and
let
do it
little
right.
essay fucking snip snip, girl. You get some scissors out there,
Say it.
butcher some wings.
Say it. Like that's worth the $3. Again,
And I'm
place of
wondering if
privilege,
it's
but
related to the employment crisis, because if we can't get people to work at McDonald's, we sure as fuck can't get them to go fucking chop chicken at Tyson in Arkansas and shit.
well, here's the other side of that, is the immigration shutdown.
Well,
Who
that's
was
the other
chopping chicken at
thing.
Tyson? It
If you
wasn't
lock
fucking
if you lock up
Americans.
all the
That's who it was.
babies, I mean, who's gonna be clipping
Well,
chicken?
you made people afraid to come into the country. The dark secret of all of our food industry, all of the agricultural industry, was none of those fucking people had
Did
papers.
you see the TikTok I sent out of the guy that was walking around an asparagus field, able-bodied, young, slender gentleman, talking about, we're going to just throw all this asparagus away because we can't get anybody to come pick it. I'm like, I have so
You
many
want to go pick it?
questions.
I fucking don't.
I'm like, well, bro, you're walking around it right now. Grab
Well,
some
yeah.
of it. It's right there in front of you. Also, because he's in the TikTok standing there. Also, are you going to pick it to throw it away? You can throw it away, but you can't pick it to sell it. Like, what do you mean? Are you just going to leave it there? If you're just going to leave it there, I understand.
Again, I mean, I'm torn, because I do think there's something to what he said.
Okay, but what are we going to do about it is what I'm saying.
We need to open the fucking borders. If you want people to pick your asparagus, you're not going to get Americans to.
But how are we going to also stop the exploiting of that labor?
Well, that's another question. And what we need to do is sort of institutionalize in a legal way that flow of labor, and we need to pay them what they're worth, and we need to pay more for our produce. So this increases our costs at the grocery store. But you know what increases them more? When they're fucking wilting on the vine and there's no one to pick them.
I took a freshman seminar course with this guy who brought in a farmer who was like a kind of a TED Talky kind of dude. And he brought in an ear of corn, and he explained how he went to Australia and breakfast was $75 because everything was organic. He was all because somebody had just done a presentation about how GMOs were bad or something, which I'm not even, if we could solve world hunger with GMOs, I think it's a lot better than 100%. Other stuff we'd put up than the chemicals we put on food. I'd rather
if the science be a GMO. Anything bad about GMOs, it'd be all over it, but the science isn't there. It's just not.
I just don't think our body is to the, I think it's probably a good, so GMOs, probably not the hill I'm going to die on is what I'm going to say. I like an organic option,
I guess,
but it's got to be cost effective and convenient. And I mean, it's,
well, there's a reason GMOs and, pesticides are another issue. But
that's the thing. That's what I'm saying is GMOs are so much better than using pesticides or hormones and other things or whatever.
100%. I mean, it's
okay,
like,
so
yes, there's unintended consequences, but you know what? Feeding people is better than not feeding people. That's the end of the equation as far as I can tell.
Now, but I just think, especially because of the way we subsidize agriculture, which isn't something I've ever.
I'm about to go here. Well, so farm subsidies.
This isn't something I've never like voted on, but farm subsidies.
You don't get to vote on it. It's an earmarked executive privilege budget thing. If we subsidize vast tracts of farmland in the Midwest, in the rural areas of this state that vote to make sure that trans kids can't play sports, they get paid to let their fields sit fallow. We spend millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of federal tax money, of New York and California money, essentially, to pay Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska farmers to sit on their fucking asses and do nothing. And now, let's be realistic about it. It's not, your Joe Yokel who's getting paid big dollars to sit on their ass. It's Monsanto, who owns those fields, who's getting paid tens of millions of dollars, for all the acreage that it has, to do nothing with it, and then turns around and puts that money back into politicians' pockets. So
now,
let's take some of that fucking money and subsidize the goddamn pickers who, let's bring them in legally, pay them what they're worth, take that money, actually grow the fucking food, actually get it to market. You divert it from, big, basically chemical companies that own fields worth of shit that they're not growing. You take that taxpayer money and you put it into the pockets of, a minimum wage earning immigrant laborer, and then send them packing at the end of their 6 months or whatever it is to go back home and take that money home, and they'll thank you for the privilege of doing it. And our food prices don't have to go up. We've now solved both of these problems.
So I mean,
the same
it
dollar
seems
we're
like
already fucking
similar,
spending.
like overhead. Most of those subsidies seem to be going to the corporate holding overhead, and not to where it would actually.
No, these aren't real people for the most part that are getting these money. The vast majority of this money goes into
Because that's part of their business
pumping up
model,
a publicly
right?
traded company's stock price. Okay,
Part of their
that
business
goes
model
to
is
Wall
also
Street.
they get that money and then they
Right.
exploit
No,
the cheapest.
They got
Are you sure
legal
your
teams.
fucking headphones are on? Because you keep interrupting me on my show. I'll mute you so goddamn quick, you cocksucker. But that they're exploiting the labor, keeping all those subsidies. And then, I mean, I feel like produce is cheap. I feel like I even sometimes, because I'm an Amazon Prime member, because I'm fucking better than you.
I'm
Not
an
you.
Amazon Prime member.
Not you.
You.
I'm talking. No, I'm not. I'm talking to the people that just guffed when I said that. So even bougie
Actually,
produce
we're both worse than them because we're subsidizing Amazon.
right. Even the bougie produce they're going to have delivered in 2 hours to my front door from Whole Foods is pretty fucking cheap compared to other types of food. And people act like produce is already so expensive, but I mean, it's not. It's also like if we actually routed the money that we're already spending to subsidize agriculture the correct way, we wouldn't have the employment issue we're having in that specific sector. And
that's
exactly like you mentioned, our fucking food prices wouldn't even have to change because we're just bettering the spending of the money that we already have. It's sort of like how states that have active prison guard unions don't want to legalize cannabis, right? I mean,
it's like money.
It's like you want to keep it fucked up just because that's how you're used to.
It's your business model.
That's your business model. Is you make money because it's fucked up,
right? No, that is fundamentally when people talk about late stage capitalism, they talk about how broken things are, and they talk about why capitalism has broken the democracy in this country. These are the issues that we're talking about. It's always follow the money. These are not new. This has been the situation for decades, and the calcified, entrenched decadence of our late stage capitalist masters who rely upon these, our taxpayer money. We pay for this. We buy Wall Street subsidies for all of this shit, and they have the audacity to sort of look down on people for taking SNAP or taking welfare or taking whatever it is when they're the biggest fucking pigs at the trough. All of the rich people have their hands in this pot. All of us benefit from it. There is a trickle down effect from this. I'm a corporate lawyer. I get it. I benefit from this. My business model, some of what that ends up subsidizing is my salary. But
that's also something that's been driving me so crazy. We were talking about my job earlier, and it seems like I really work in these schools that have these student populations that need a lot of help because it helps me feel like I'm really doing something important. I'm not going to do that shit anymore, but I've done it for a long time and it was great. And you know what? I did my part, and I'm going to go just out in the pasture and feed my birds. But it seems like the model itself is predatory. And even if it's not an entity pocketing a lot of the federal money, which is happening, there are institutions all over the country that are exploiting impoverished student populations for their federal enrollment dollars.
Exploded over the last 4 years with
it happens all over the place. But also, oh yeah, it's a fucking nightmare. Because I mean, even if it's not one corporate entity, for example, hoarding a bunch of money, siphoning it away, that could also look in the way of a whole network of professionals making salaries that maybe aren't necessary because maybe they're undermining and exploiting a school system that's already in place.
Well, I would say the school systems are much less a candidate of that, although there is some of that. But look at that. You've just now hit the nail on the head as to why American healthcare is the way American healthcare is, because there is an entire this middle waste of fat that exists only because the system requires the churning of these insurance dollars and the denial and the administration of all of these facets of American medicine, which have nothing to do with medical care. They have everything to do with the financing behind it. And you've got, entire very, very large companies, I don't want to shit on Centene. They're, I think, as far as
I think I own some Centene. Let me look at
St. Louis, they're very valuable. They're great philanthropists in St. Louis, but their entire business model only exists because we aren't of the European Canadian model to say that people have a right to healthcare. If we move to that, Centene doesn't have a business model anymore, and I'll leave it at that. They're hardly alone. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs in this country are devoted to industries which do not need to exist and exist only to siphon money, because it's there. It's not the fault of the industry. It's the fault of the system that allows that industry to exist in the first place.
But part of correcting those mistakes, when you try to legislate those mistakes, is
very
you have
painful.
to be able to go in and repurpose that labor. You have to be able to go in and say, yes, I'm going to take away all these coal mining jobs.
And that's never going to happen.
Pack your shit, because we're all going to fucking solar panelville or whatever.
It's never going to happen without government intervention. You cannot. The market will not take care of
this. Is the thing that happens, because I totally understand a lot of small government options, but in the arguments about specific issues, I always very quickly get to a point where it's like, okay, one, those people don't really understand how big even their small government is. Number one, you and me have talked about this in detail before, but also they're not paying attention to that the point of even having a centralized government is to uphold things.
It's not to make the other team lose. It's right. actually to help people.
It's actually
this is what our government together. Is supposed to do, right? Like, it's
right. It's an agreed upon fabric and an ideal
to prevent us from killing each other over resources.
It's
the law designed. The law is the alternative to violence. That is,
and so the law has to step in when we fuck things up, and we used to fuck things up by just killing other people for food and shit. And so then
it became not a problem when you wiped out the next village. You got all their food. And
not an issue. But then enough of us that got tired of getting speared for ribs, we were like, hey, bruh, I bet you I would have been delicious on the plains. If you came up on a tribe of fucking pudgy hobbits and you speared one of these, I bet you this meat was tender.
Keep going with that thought for 1 second.
Yeah. So, I worry about that. So I worry about just where we're going with some of those things, because we need, especially when we're talking about people that can't defend themselves without an advocate that has a stake in the system. You know what I mean? When we're talking about children, that's a great example, which is also fucking a travesty, because schools are only really operating on the bare minimum set forth by the state and the laws. You know what I mean? Like, it's
and I live in a wealthy community.
Yeah.
We pay a relatively high amount of taxes. We continually vote, not continually, we occasionally vote down taxes, but Webster Groves has traditionally voted for additional resources for our schools, and yet it's not enough. Our teachers are reasonably well paid, and I think our administrators are well paid, and I think our resources are good, but they always need more. And the state's not providing anything at this point, so it's really on the property owners to go it up. And yet here I am. I also am sending one of my kids to private school. Beyond that, what does that say about our system? And
that's the thing. I've worked in the system for so long, and I went to some really, really great schools and received a really great education. And we've talked about it on the show a lot recently that it just turns out everyone that worked there was also a sex predator, apparently. That keeps coming out in the fucking news. I'm like, so I got rescued.
About Kirkwood.
Yeah, I got rescued from a really broken system that really didn't even like or want me, and we went to a couple other places, and then we landed in a place that ended up to be a really good fit, and then it just turns out I was just dodging the rape monsters the whole time.
You weren't their target, in fairness. What I've read about the particular individuals, part of it was having a penis, in fairness. They weren't after your penis. They
You
just
can't
weren't.
acknowledge my penis on my podcast. We're an hour and a half
I'm
in.
really sorry. I thought you were out about your penis
I
and its
try not to
existence.
gender myself in public.
Hey, that wasn't about gender. It was just about your physical equipment. This is, I mean, it is.
That's true. That's a good
It's,
point.
your gender is not attached to your genitalia.
You're doing it again. You're acknowledging my genitalia.
I'm sorry that I acknowledged your
This is
genitalia.
really good. I think this kind of is a good snapshot this is a headline that reminded me of the example of the kind of system that we're complaining about right now. Schools use software that blocks LGBTQ plus content, but not white supremacisms.
Because of course it doesn't.
A motherboard investigation found the algorithmic surveillance tools allow racist groups like the KKK while flagging LGBTQ health sites as porn.
First of all, what business does the schools have, censoring materials in the first place, right? Like who gets to be the arbiter of what is censored?
In a perfect system, it would, if that was happening, it would happen in a way that the school board would vote on the implementation of a certain technology or filter. They would approve that.
That's happened though, and I mean, these are still discriminatory systems at best. I mean, I'm simultaneously torn on this in that I think that the schools have no place in really determining what content students should have access to, and also being like, why do they have a fucking laptop in the first place? They should be reading books. So I'm simultaneously a free speech advocate and a Luddite in this regard. And I do think unfettered access as a parent to the internet is a terrible idea for sort of obvious reasons. But I neither do I trust school administrators to make good choices about what things need to be censored. So it's like it's a fraught sort of. I have sympathy for the people who are charged with making these decisions, because I wouldn't want to be in charge either. I'd be like, well, fuck, they shouldn't even have access to the internet. What do they need an internet for? Here's an Encyclopedia Britannica. This is everything you need.
Hey, you're killing it today. You are on fire, sister.
I don't know what that means.
I got more good shit here. Florida private school bans vaccinated teachers. Did you see this?
I did, and I wondered about the legality of that.
Yeah,
because I don't think
a private school in Miami, citing false claims, bars vaccinated teachers from having contact with students. A private school in the fashionable design district of Miami sent its faculty and staff a letter last week about getting vaccinated against COVID-19.
I'll just say, my instinct as a lawyer was, knowing, having looked into, at least the advice of my partners on this point, that you can, as an employer, discriminate against people who refuse to be vaccinated. Yeah. That's pretty well trodden ground, relatively speaking. To discriminate against someone who has chosen to be vaccinated seems like something that HIPAA would prohibit you from even fucking knowing in the first place.
Yeah. So apparently this lady, this is Leela Sentner. Yeah, Sentner.
Yeah, no, she's a piece of shit. And
okay, so it turns out. Okay, so this is really great. So she apparently shared. She's an anti-vaxxer on Facebook,
right?
And shared something about reports have surfaced recently of non-vaccinated people being negatively impacted by interacting with people who have been vaccinated. Even among our own population, we have at least 3 women with menstrual cycles impacted after spent time with a vaccinated person.
Right.
Okay, so
she's fucking Looney Tunes.
So she's a nut job. Okay. Good. I just save headlines because I want to react organically for the show. I try not to.
I did actually see
ruin
that.
It.
I think she's on dubious legal ground at best.
At best, yeah. And so these are the people. And that's a private school. It sounds like a nice place.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a nice place. It's you see, you grew up in a city, man. I grew up in rural Missouri, or on the edge of it at least, where the private schools around there were like, what whack job, right wing religious views are you going to indoctrinate kids into and make sure that they hate
She's in downtown
else?
Miami.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know,
but it's Florida.
She doesn't sound like the right wing, Christian identity cults that I grew up around.
Yeah.
It's more this left wing granola, anti-vaxxer cult stuff. Equally poisonous, just a different flavor.
Yeah, she probably is addicted to cocaine.
That seems slanderous. I'd be careful about what you say.
What?
On what basis did you make that allegation, Mr.
Oh,
Manage?
okay. Leela can come for me. That would only boost my ratings. Some local shit, some local bullshit. I've been saving this for you, Alfred.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna bring up.
I know,
what
I got it. Hold on, let me get my fucking headline. Rockwood teachers call for protection from harassment over diversity curriculum. Teachers in the Rockwood School District are calling on the school board and superintendent to protect them from personal attacks and outright threats of violence as the district grapples with backlash against its diversity and equity programs.
So did you see the Rockwood School Board's publication today that was sort of responsive to this?
No, I did see a response. Hold on, before we get to there, because I want to go in chronological order. That a Black Rockwood alumni group countered the protest over race and curriculum. So basically, Rockwood has this diversity curriculum, like most schools do, to build sensitivity in response to some of the public conversation over injustices and things that we want to prevent in the classroom. And teachers are obviously most of the time really into this and really very much like, yes, I want all of my students to feel welcome in the classroom and I want to be a part of the solution. Well, parents feel like they're being made to feel guilty for being white or something, and they're mad.
I don't know that it needs to even be said, but let's just lay it out there. If the idea of racism makes you feel personally attacked, maybe you're a fucking racist.
I think it needs to be said. I totally agree with you. It seems obvious, but I don't think anything can just be assumed to be common knowledge anymore.
Well, I mean, facts have no meaning anymore. We've established that over the last 4 years.
I mean, they're boring.
Well, they're clearly boring, and people's opinions and how they feel about things is more valuable than actual, verifiable and reproducible results in the real world. But, having said that, there is clearly a contingent of people in the Rockwood School District. I'm not even sure they're parents, because I saw, the video and the pictures of the people who were at these meetings. Not one fucking mask, by the way, at any of these meetings, and they were packed in like sardines. But a lot of those people looked like they were old enough to have, grandchildren that had children in the Rockwood School District.
Right.
So I question whether they are current parents of Rockwood students. And in any case, there's just a lot of feelings on display about, what it was that they felt like was being alleged when people talked about race in general, that had nothing to do with anything that was actually happening in the Rockwood School District. So, this was clearly a platform for people who are aggrieved by the concept that people are talking about race, and they wanted to make sure they had their 15 minutes of Karen screaming into a microphone and the ability to do that at the Rockwood School District.
Yeah.
Then you have, the death threats and, the racial epithets that are flung anonymously, as all brave people would do, to the actual officials who are tasked with, trying to make the 10% of kids in their district who are not white feel like they're not a complete pariah within their own school district. And I have all the sympathy in the world for these people. But I wanted to point out that today there was a statement issued by the Rockwood School Board, and I think it hit all of the standard platitudes that you could fairly attribute to most, official bodies in this thing. We don't think racism is okay, and nobody should be giving death threats to our employees. Please stop that. The extraordinary, platforms that they would take to say, perhaps, threatening our personnel for doing their jobs is out of line. But they made a point of, as an aside, saying, and I quote, "We want to be very clear. The Rockwood School District is not teaching critical race theory, because that matters."
But that's the thing that's spewed out on the other side, on the alternative news sources, that CRT is
what is critical race theory? What is the legal definition of this thing that the state is now trying to ban, because they are
trying
to make this illegal?
Yeah.
Like, there's a bill that's been passed.
It's really just an academic concept that implies that society is centered around a certain privileged class of people that were predetermined by the founders of the institutions that kind of run all of our life. It's not necessarily saying that those people
Well,
are
is that
evil.
actually critical race theory, or is that the right-wing caricature of critical race?
No. I mean, it's truly just it's a harmless academic concept that, I mean, hold on, let's go.
I'm no
intellectual movement and loosely organized framework of legal analysis based on the premise that race is not a natural biological grounded feature of physically distinct subgroups of
now that's beings. Not what you just said at all. No, that's not what you just said at all. That's actually a thing that
I'm reading
seems to have some scientific validity, that race may be a social construct.
You're doing the thing again. Well, that's what I'm saying. But a socially constructed category that is used to oppress and exploit people of color. So yeah, I mean, that
racism exists is critical race theory.
Right.
And we want to make this illegal. Tennessee.
It's probably Josh Hawley's idea.
Missouri is going to make it illegal to teach our kids functionally that racism exists. And Rockwood just went out on a limb and said, we want to be very clear. The Rockwood School District is not teaching, and I'm paraphrasing, that racism exists.
Yeah, that racism is a socially constructed, or race is a socially constructed category that is used to oppress and exploit people of color.
We're not teaching this. We want to be clear.
We just want you to know we're not teaching that. I think there were, because I think that's that's from Britannica. I mean
so I think that's a fairly. I really like what you just said was the sort of leading question that I was asking. I hoped that I knew the answer, and you gave the one I was hoping you would give, and I think it was a really well said definition of what critical race theory is, and this is what we're arguing about. Functionally, that racism is a social construct that is used to oppress certain people based on characteristics that are immutable and that they don't control.
Right.
In my world, this is a fundamentally and wholly uncontroversial concept. that
well, and mine too.
People have used race as a way to exploit other people and to oppress them. And the mere fact of that might be, you might teach my precious little baby that other people have used race as a way to exploit and oppress other people is a personal fucking attack on me. It is so pathetically beneath contempt. It's hard to articulate how little respect for the parents I have in who would go out on a limb and publicly take this position.
Right.
You are publicly shouting to the world that you are an unworthy participant in society in doing that. It is something so just basic in its concept that you're just announcing how inadequate you are by opposing it.
I get it.
And as a white man, a person of privilege, it is deeply, deeply offensive that anyone would take that position, let alone this group of people, these geniuses out in Rockwood. It just sort of illustrate why the maxim that there's nothing good outside of 270 exists.
And for those of you that aren't in St. Louis, we have this highway that conveniently encircles the civilized part of where we live, and then there's some weird shit on the outskirts, and then beyond it starts to really get crazy. That's where we
here be cows.
Yeah, we get we have a north, a west, and a south that are all just fucking wild the farther out you get. And really, I mean, you don't have to get
north far. Is the river, and then it's Illinois. It's like doesn't even count.
There's like stuff
you're
north
like Jersey County.
There's stuff like north of the airport though.
I mean, that's a whole different. That's its own.
They have civilization up there. I don't know.
It's its own thing. I
haven't been there since COVID.
Well, I mean, let's be honest about this. It is a part of town where people of color reside, and it is traditionally regarded in many circles of white people as being a place you don't travel. And honestly, I don't have a lot of acquaintances that have a lot of personal knowledge of it. I mean, the times I ventured up there,
that's the thing too. Is like the segregation is so deep and historical here, and geographical, that it's hard to even intentionally climb out of.
Well, that's right. Socially. You have to intentionally. You have to reach out, and it's very, very. The barriers there are very. I'm an out of towner. I'm not from here, but you know, I was able to sort of slink pretty easily into South County and into, you know, sort of the Webster area. That's a natural fit for me. You
I
know,
bet.
anywhere north of Delmar, I mean, I just don't know anyone who knows anyone.
But
You
that's the
know,
thing. You wouldn't even have a reason to go up there because you wouldn't be invited because you don't know anyone that would go up there.
no, if
Except
it's
for
not
me.
Upsall.
I mean, I go up there to work sometimes.
Well, and there are a few spots, but I mean, there, you know, as far as community connections,
Right.
I literally don't know how I would. I mean,
Yeah.
there are a couple of people who
No,
I have
every time I do
professional
something up
connections
there.
to that if I really wanted to tap, those are the people I would really talk to.
Yeah.
But it would
But
be
again, you'd be
super
going.
presumptuous to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, and you'd also be going so intentionally out of your way. It's just not natural. And it's just, and which is just revealing how again, how deep the problem is, totally aside from us or any of our choices.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean,
We just don't have
this is an
and the thing is that
institutional societal problem
right, and that's
that
what we're talking
we
about.
are oppressed by as well.
I'm
If we're
not
honest
telling,
about it.
like, I'm not telling you as a mother that you're this is proverbial, that you're a bad person because your kids are white. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we want your kids to be a part of preventing any of those injustices from continuing, and we just want to
Trying to
set them
bridge
up
the
for
gap.
success. Yeah.
So I mean, one of the things that struck me about the legislature, which I read the bill that was passed, and you know, they targeted some specific organizations for, you know, thou shalt not teach these in school, and one of them is We Stories, and I don't know if you're familiar with what We Stories is, but it's literally like this organization. It's a charitable organization. It's a 501c3. They go out and they get, you know, stories of people's experiences. That is, they're documenting. Their whole MO is to go out and sort of, you know, document actual experiences in the community by people, and to record and to communicate those things. And I knew about it because at one point we sat down with the kids and we're like, we're going to allocate X dollars. And then again, showing off my privilege here, and I'm not trying to virtue signal, but it's true because we set aside X dollars we're going to give to organizations, and we want you, our kids, to have a stake in finding what organizations we should donate to. So we want you to, you know, here's, you know, let's go on the internet and look and find, you know, worthy causes that you've heard about through our parish or whatever, you know, and give to some of them. And one of the 501c3s we donated to was We Stories. I'd never heard of it before. My kids found it. The legislature has taken it in their infinite wisdom to say, this is so anathema, we're going to make it a defunding illegal event for a school to teach these We Stories that, you know, effectively were like going out with a tape recorder into the community and getting people's ideas about, you know, what happened, in you know, with a focus on people of color. That's going to be illegal. That's a thing our state legislature is actively working to make illegal, to teach our children in school. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, it bums me out. It's a bummer. Speaking of bummers, less than half of our kids are on grade level here in Missouri. In the state of Missouri, 64% of high school graduates read at a below basic level of proficiency, which is in the red. Most of the proficiency scales we use categorize proficiency in terms of below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced. Proficient is typically the 70th percentile in terms of expectations. I know this. It's been a part of my job to keep up with these things. Nationally, as we've talked about on this show, we had stagnated in academics for about 10 years, even before COVID. COVID is not helping at all. The deficit was already there, though. My wife and I were talking about Harry Potter the other day.
No, totally on topic.
Yeah. And how her and I learned to read with those books, and we got to grow up alongside those characters in real time, and it really fed our literacy because that.
And now we're not allowed to talk about Harry Potter because of J.K. Rowling anymore.
Right, and because she's a TERF.
Right.
You know, but people still listen to Michael Jackson.
I'm actually deeply sad about that.
It's a bummer. It's a bummer that, I mean, that, you know, that you can't just fucking create art that's beautiful and perfect and then just fucking
shut
drown.
the fuck up. Just shut the fuck
just
up.
Fucking,
just go off and do your thing.
Just
with
don't
your
talk
$1
to
billion.
anybody. Just don't
it's
talk
fine.
to anybody.
Right.
Don't ruin it. What?
We don't need your opinion about
you?
trans people. Like, we don't need it.
Who was asking her? Nobody asked her. Does she even have children?
I think a lot of people ask her a lot of things, in fairness to her, and it's no way a defense of her opinions. But you know, I think it would be actually hard to disappear off the face of the planet. And she
And
does
I
have
also
kids,
get
right?
it, because we've talked about this argument before, that certain oppressed groups need to make sure that they are not upstaged by newer oppressed groups. I totally understand that feeling or that impulse,
It's
but that's
definitely an
just
insecurity, right? Like
yeah,
it comes from like, oh, we
yeah.
got to defend our
He's like,
for the lack
hey,
at the
I'm
lack of
just a
being funny,
lady, but I
our
have
turf.
problems. Yeah, that's the thing. So she's a problem, but I don't think a lot of kids younger than my wife and I, or people around that age that had a similar relationship with a similar series of books, had a lot of that, because I'm not seeing it certainly any longer in
I don't know
schools, at
that
least that I have
a
access
lot of
to.
kids read books anymore.
That's what I'm
It's
saying,
it's a
brother. That's
real struggle.
exactly what I'm saying.
I see it in my kids. I mean, it's like, but we've got Audible. They listen to audiobooks. They're like, well, I'll just listen to it. Like, no, it's not the same. Like, you don't get the same imaginative experience. And I love audiobooks. I'm preaching on them, but you don't get the same. Just you're in your world of that author when you listen to something as you do when you read it.
Yeah.
So we try with our kids. It's they've just they had audiobooks before they could read. It's
Right.
a world I can't
Yeah.
understand.
Well, and there's so much of that in schools now that's just like, okay, they just let so many kids just let the
Hey, at
computer
least you're
read
getting the
things to them.
material, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's like, but even like the map test lets it read most of it to them. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you testing? I had to
Right.
read all that shit when I was a kid.
Like, here's a book, figure it out. Like, there was, I'm okay with the educational system being friendlier, but at the same time, I don't think we're doing ourselves, our kids, etc., any favors in sort of making it easier.
Yeah.
Not every kid. This is where we come back to it. Like, we now have this idea that every kid should be college educated. Every kid should get the same level. Not every kid is an aptitude for that. We still need kids to be plumbers.
It's not even what's best for every kid.
That's exactly my point.
Even if we could get them through it, it's not even what's going to be.
I think you can drag them through it, but you still need kids that are going to be fulfilled by being plumbers or running a jackhammer or digging holes or whatever. And I say that I've done all of those things, and they were fun.
I hung drywall one summer. It was hell. It's a huge reason why
if
was so
I could
motivated
dig holes
to continue school
9 months out of the year and make a good living doing it, and I knew I would have that job for life, I would never have gone to law school. I loved fucking working a shovel. It was great.
You are such a fucking bumpkin.
I mean, I'm from Platte County. What do you want from me?
You're lucky you're not here right now, because I would smack you right across your face.
I'd give you a hug when you did it.
I'd lick you in your mouth. I just part of what I was thinking about the Avengers earlier is and part of the conversation I was having with somebody today about how we've just jumped the shark culturally in such a way that, like, we don't even have the pressure of the serious context of theater anymore. Like, now even the blockbusters are just streaming into your house, so the pressure is just off. Hold on, I'm going somewhere with this.
Fair enough.
So the etymology, though, for some of my listeners that maybe don't know, because I say this a lot, so I just assume everyone knows, jumping the shark. Al, where would you say that comes from?
It comes from an episode of Happy Days where the Fonz literally rode his motorcycle over a ramp and a shark tank and jumped over a shark.
Oh, I thought it was when they went to Hawaii and he was on the skis.
I'm pretty sure it was a motorcycle escapade, like it was a stunt. And I will confess, I've never seen the episode. I've only read about it. So this could all be apocryphal.
Oh, in my memory, I thought he had to jump over a shark while he was on skis, because he was like surfing with his leather jacket on.
That may also have happened, and we may both be right. But either way, the saying "jumping the shark" became sort of a metaphor for when a series went on too long, because at that point, Happy Days needed to die a swift death, and it continued to go for a long time. And everything after that point was redundant for any show that should have ever existed. Happy Days should have stopped being. So when a show or a thing jumps the shark, that's the point at which it really should have died a natural death.
Now, I say this about culture a lot, when things happen that are just so ridiculous, like when a reality TV star becomes president, or when I had my first deep fried Oreo. It's just one of the things that, like, we've jumped the shark. It's not going to get better. Everything that was really perfect probably already happened somewhere up the way, and then the peak I mean, it's just going to be a doozy. Now, I also was reminded of this recently. New Sufjan Stevens record.
Speaking of jumping the shark,
and it's like all instrumental, drony, like orchestral. It's like if there were B-sides to a Wes Anderson movie. I listened to like 30 seconds of like 4 different tracks, and then I wrote down that I couldn't listen to any more of it. Society is similar. Eventually the shark is going to start doing some of the jumping, Alfred. Eventually the world is going to dunk on us. It's going to be like that women's soccer game, I think it was, like a ceremonial match between the winner and the lowest ranked team, and it was just a fucking massacre. Like, it wasn't even fun to watch. It was like the English team or whoever won against like the team from Thailand, and they just, it seriously was like 11-0, and the girls from Thailand didn't even really know what to do. It was just not good.
And the English team was like, yeah, every time they score.
When you start making things like the quesalupa and just giving up on the environment and just
no, stop right there.
And just never paying anyone enough money to really have a decent life and having unrealistic expectations all the time, the horse is gonna buck, Alfred.
The quesalupa restored my faith in the existence of the divine.
But they were out of it last time I wanted it.
Well,
I bet you I couldn't go get one after this.
That is devastating, and I'm with you. I understand why you feel the way you do about it. If you were denied a quesalupa experience when you
maybe the quesalupa is an unfair example, but do you remember the double wide chalupa?
I mean, all of the above. There's so many Taco Bell items that really, every time I think they can't give me something else that makes me excited, they come around and they do it, and I get excited again. Yeah. And it is. There's so many times. I can't overstate how much better, in my view, Taco Bell is than every other fast food restaurant.
Yeah,
there's so many things that is done right, and they take it away, and yet they do it again. And every time I think it's like, okay, this is it. I can't live without this thing. They come back with something better.
I caught this Hundo T-Tar after having a double wide chalupa.
I wondered how this was at all relevant.
Yeah, because you know what? I had the double wide chalupa. I ate it with a fork. It was delicious. And then
did you have a sweet tea with it?
It was July 13th, 2017, because that's when I caught this Hundo T-Tar from a raid with my friend Carla.
I'll tell you, Jake, I still miss the bacon cheeseburger burrito from 1998. And that's a thing that you probably don't even remember.
You know, I really love the enchilito.
Well, the enchilito was also good. Do you remember the enchilito commercial?
Yeah.
Enchilito!
I like the box and the red sauce. It's the sauce that's in the bean burrito, which is part of why I get the bean burrito every time I go.
I'm still partial to the spicy potato taco, and I'm really happy.
It's back.
I know.
It's back. I had like 5 of them the other day.
I had them this week.
Seriously, I don't even crave meat from there. I just want that taco and the bean burrito. And now they're doing shit with black beans that I haven't tried, but
I didn't even see that. So
they're doing shit where like they'll replace any protein on any of their items. Instead of chicken or beef, you can get fucking black beans. And my friend Barry from Ground Control got it, and he said it was really great.
I mean, if first of all, black beans stand up on their own. You don't need meat. I'm a carnivore. I will eat every meat. I love it. Yeah. Black beans, great. Like black bean burger, one of my favorite things.
Like I love a fucking burger, or obviously a steak, or some chicken or something. But also, I'll eat a whole fucking thing of hummus, or any kind of a black bean dip. I've made a black bean hummus before that was really good.
Black beans are as far as like the first ingredient outside.
We got to try that. We got to try the black bean thing. But the spicy potato soft taco is back.
We probably need to have like we need to set a date. We need to devote we need to have some menu items we need to try, and we need to sit down and have a podcast episode, 10 minutes.
There's a nice little
where you and I really give our ratings of the things.
There's a nice little park behind the Taco Bell in Maplewood that
could we film a segment? Could we do this?
They have tables and it's fenced in. I could even bring my dogs. We should do that. Could we
film us and then you post it and we talk about it?
Yeah, you're the one that's hard to get with.
I'll make time for Taco Bell.
Okay, we'll do a Taco Bell episode.
You tell me when it needs to happen.
In a couple
my
weeks.
COVID flexibility with a day, like I could do this during a work day if I had to. Like I am more flexible, even though like there are times like I can't do it that day. But there are other days like, okay, it's 3 p.m. Let's go to Taco Bell. Like I will totally do this.
In a couple of weeks, we're doing a D&D segment where we're going to play a whole one-shot game of D&D for the show for Twitch.
Can I do that? Can I play a character?
I'll send you the deets. But after that, we should do a live Taco Bell segment. I think that would
I
be really fun.
I want to do both of these things. I don't mean to invite myself to your D&D session if you
No,
already got a
I
full
mean, I don't
party.
know how many people it is. I'm sure you're welcome.
I'm
I don't.
just saying
Again,
I
I don't. I
got a
can't
long
imagine
and
it's going to work
storied
with your life.
history of I played a D&D game last summer, buddy. I had a running Sunday game during COVID.
You are anytime I need to have you on, like, I need to figure out how often I need this much content because it's so easy to pass through the time with you, Joe.
I got one
Sometimes,
more beer up here before I got to go to the basement for another one. So I mean, you got at least another 20 minutes out of me.
yeah. And I think we're doing really good.
I mean, you can always cut this down. This is a live. No one's watching us at this point, surely. Like,
No. Oh my God, no. We have a couple of people that have been here with us the whole time. We're doing really great.
Let me get my last beer.
Get your beer.
Riff on your D&D session. Pump your shit. Like this is good.
So just
I want to
mention.
even if I'm not a part of it, I want to watch it.
No, yeah. So that's going to be, I think we're doing that on the 16th. I don't want to hard commit anyone to a date. Patreon is launching this summer. Originally, I was thinking a little bit earlier, but definitely summer. We're launching some exclusive. There'll be audio content. There will be ride-alongs with me and Joe in the car. There will be all kinds of things emerging on Patreon. But before then, the 16th, I think, we're doing a live D&D game for Twitch down here, and that's Jacob VSTL on Twitch. Also, that Apex ban was obviously an error or temporary. Apex is back streaming. Girl,
wait, you got banned?
9. Like my PC account got banned for a minute, but I think I won a match with a guy that must have been hacking because I was streaming and I even sent
you were in a pair with a guy that was.
I got paired with a rando who I rezzed, and then we won, and he was just really tubing him with this fucking Mastiff, bro. And I think he may have had a little aimbot situation. Now, I wanted to wrap up with a couple things. I always throw these things in here because I think they're helpful, and it is a part of the mission of the show. Something I learned in therapy this week is something called a problematic thinking error, something that I'm working on addressing in my own life to help create more sustained examples of joy and less panic. And so what happens is if I feel fear, my brain assumes I am in danger. If I'm really uncomfortable, I may think I'm unsafe, but it is truly just a feeling. Trauma creates stuck points in our brain, right? And the trauma itself may be in the past, but I may still be living like the threat is still imminent somewhere, right? For example, when I feel conflict, I feel unsafe, but that language is probably not helpful. Disagreement is not always full-scale conflict, right? And my brain just does that. I've probably never truly felt physically unsafe, like for real. I've probably never actually been in real physical danger. So all my real experience with conflict has been emotional or social or stuff like that. So unstucking these stuck points is what I'm working on to expand my window of tolerance. I've been burning some cedar to empower my root chakra so I feel more grounded and confident in making decisions.
That felt like a left turn from the rest of what you were talking about.
No, it's good. It's all part of it. It's all part of it. It's how I'm working on that. And what I'm really learning and then really trying to share with my younger friends who I've been kind of spending a lot of time with lately to help myself feel more relevant is I think we need to spend more time focusing on the process of our experience and less on the end product. I tell Joe all the time he's obsessed with finish lines. I call him on everything. He wants to get to a point where things are absolute enough that they don't have to be worried about as often. But I think our ideals are always high marks for which we should aim, Alfred, as with faith, for example. Fighting every day to live true to those ideals is far greater than any one victory. I mean, we're not ultimately going to stick it to all those Rockwood parents that that want to restore whiteness. If it's 2 hours, there's no way we're getting into how they protect whiteness as property. But I did write a piece on this once.
That it sounds like a topic for another night. But
yeah,
I think what you're talking about fundamentally is mindfulness and being present in the moment, right? If you're talking about process versus the end result, it's there are clearly objectives that we all aspire to, but being able to be in the moment and to be present for every aspect of that is equally important, if not more important, certainly, than why we're doing it.
See, See?
What you looking at?
Well, I'm just wrapping up the show here. I'm just getting some stuff ready. And I think it's important because here's the thing, is I like to start the show with some lighter stuff. We get deep into the weeds with the thick shit like we've been doing here for the past 90 minutes. I want to leave people with a little bit of hope. I want them to know that they're going to be okay. And that if they're trying to be okay often, then they're more likely to get closer to being okay than if they just fucking snort heroin and eat Cheetos.
Amen to that, bro.
Though I do understand the appeal. I just saw something on was it The Martian where he dips potatoes in Vicodin?
It's been a while since I've read or seen it, and I don't remember potatoes and Vicodin, but there was a lot of potatoes, so you might not be wrong.
I think he was dipping them in Vicodin. So he was like, fuck it, you can't control what I do. I'm stuck on this goddamn planet. I'm Matt Damon.
I'm Matt Damon.
I'm Matt Damon. I'm Matt Damon, and Alfred is a dirty little kitchen boy.
And you could take the boy out of the kitchen, but you don't take the kitchen out of the boy.
Wow. Oh God, we didn't even talk about your girlfriend losing the election.
Well, that's a topic for another day.
We'll have to save it. We'll have to get her on the show. She's not busy.
I think she may have things on her agenda.
I doubt it. I want that exit interview. Oh my God, how good would that be if I could get her? You got to call her for me.
I will do what I can.
You rat bastard! Don't you give me false hope.
I'm hedging on this one, but I have no control.
Let me wrap this up, guys. That's another episode of Jacob V Weekly. High five. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple, Podbean, Google, whatever. Please subscribe, rate, review, do whatever the thing is telling you to do. We have an Instagram page for the show at Jacob V Weekly. You can contact the show with questions or topics for future discussion at jacobvweekly@gmail.com. You can call the show on our Instagram. There's a phone number on one of our previous flyers. Give me the goods. Joe has to filter through that stuff and find good stuff, but hook it up. Just send it. You're sending it to Joe. You can find our original music on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Deezer. You can Bing it. Spotify playlists are updated frequently. We did it, guys. Be safe. Jacob V Weekly. High five.
Are we off air? Will you still talk to me? This is like my bar. That's all I got. This is why it takes us. This is why I will always go for like 3 hours. If you give me a time, because what the fuck else am I doing? Like, I don't get to see people. I actually went to the office today.